رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية أمير المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، قال إمام زين العابدين عليه السلام: اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأبدلني من بغضتك بغضة أهلي الشنان المحبة، ومن حسد أهل البغاء المودة. صلوات. In the name of God, the most beneficent, most merciful. Tonight's topic is on Imam Zain al-Abideen, the fourth Imam. Just like the previous nights, we talked about how much importance is given to the first Imam and the third Imam, Imam Ali and Imam Hussein. In the previous nights, we talked about how much little light is shed upon Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, and how much misconceptions were made about his life. Tonight is also a night where we look at one of the other Imams, which in my opinion is also underrepresented and misrepresented, and that none other than Imam Zain al-Abideen, also known as Imam Sajjad. When you look at Imam Zain al-Abideen alayhi salam, he is very much respected within the entirety of Islam. Be it Shia, be it Sunni, everybody reveres Imam Zain al-Abideen alayhi salam. Because for many, Imam Zain al-Abideen is a colossus when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to worship, when it comes to piety. Nobody denies the greatness of Imam Zain al-Abideen alayhi salam. But that's just one aspect of the Imam's life. And usually the other parts or the other attributes and the characteristics of Imam Zain al-Abideen is thrown under the bus and not many people talk about it. So tonight, inshallah, we'll shed some light on that. When we listen and we hear about Zain al-Abideen, many of us, all we know about Zain al-Abideen is his participation in Karbala, and maybe his journey to Kufa, and maybe his journey to Sham. But Imam Zain al-Abideen lives 35 years after Karbala. There is no way that there is nothing that I know in 35 years, especially when Imam Zain al-Abideen is living for that long after his father's death. It is impossible for me to sit here and think that Imam Zain al-Abideen did nothing for 35 years after his father passed away. Surely he would have done something. Surely he would have left a legacy behind. And tonight, inshallah, we'll look at that. When we listen or we hear about Zain al-Abideen, many books, unfortunately, is providing a misconception where Zain al-Abideen was a pious man, and he was very much affected by his father's death, Imam Hussein at Karbala. And he spent the rest of his life crying for his father and the tragedy of Karbala and so on and so forth. Now, that statement is partially true. Yes, there is no doubt Imam Zain al-Abideen was traumatized by what happened in Karbala, no doubt. But it's not just what happened to his life. His life did not just always evolve around Karbala. There was so much more to Imam Zain al-Abideen's life. As we know, he was born on the 5th of Sha'ban in the 36th year after Hijrah. And his mother is known as Shahr Banu and his father is known as Imam Hussein. Shahr Banu was not from an Arab descent. She was Iranian. She was Persian. And what Imam Hussein alayhi salam did was, through his marriage, he built a cultural link between the Arabs and the Persians. Prior to Imam Hussein, it was a taboo and it was not very well known for an Arab to mix in terms of relationship with a non-Arab. When Imam Hussein marries Shahrbanu, he paves the way for cultural linking between two ethnicities, let's say. And then later on, this relationship between the Arabs and the Persians, it evolves, it gets better. And then later on, so much that it evolves where most of the scholars that we have today are Persians. Bukhari was Persian. Let's say Muslim was Persian. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, or for example, these were all Persians. Now, Shahrbanu was given the name Shahrbanu because initially her name was Shah-e-Zanan. In Farsi, Shah-e-Zanan means the queen of the women or the mistress of the women. Shah-e-Zanan in the Arabic language translated to Sayyidatun Nisa. Imam Hussein changed the name because he believed Sayyidatun Nisa was only for Fatima. Salamullah alayha. Sayyidatun Nisa al-Alameen is only reserved for Lady Fatima. So that's why her name was changed to Shahrbanu. Last few nights we talked about how if God loves His creation, He will not give them trials. That's not the truth. The Prophet went through trials, Imam Ali went through challenges, Imam Hassan and Hussein went through challenges. Likewise, Imam Zain al-Abideen will go through challenges. Zain al-Abideen's challenges is very special because it's through the challenges of Zain al-Abideen is where you and I are sitting here tonight. Imam Zain al-Abideen loses a lot of people in his life. In Karbala, he lost the most important people in his life. Before Karbala, Shahrbanu, his mother, passes away. Shortly after, she gives birth to him. Imagine losing your mother throughout childhood. So the only person that is there to bring you up is your father. And he lived with his stepmothers, of course. So from an early age, Imam Zain al-Abideen is a person who has no mother to take care of. For those of you who have mothers, you know exactly what this means. In Karbala, he loses his father, his backbone, his greatest supporter. He loses his uncle Abbas at the Furat, where he has both of his arms chopped off. He loses his brother Ali al-Akbar. He loses his cousins Qasim. He loses his other cousins, the sons of Muslim ibn Aqil. He loses his very sister Ruqayya in Sham, 3 years old child. He loses all of his siblings. Imagine how much trauma this man is going through. Imam Zain al-Abideen, after Karbala, of course, we've heard the story of Karbala many times, so I'm not going to go through it. After Karbala, one of his main important roles is that he is the one who buries the bodies of the martyrs. If you've been to Karbala, you will see that there's a certain structure in Bain al-Haramain, inside the harams, there's a certain structure of the tombs. The story behind it is that Banu Asad was one of the tribes, and the wives of Banu Asad were unhappy with their husbands. Why? Because they said, you neglected the grandson of the Holy Prophet. When Hussein said, Hal min nasirin yansurni, you did not answer to his call. When Hussein said, is there anyone to help me? You did not answer to his call. So therefore the wives of Banu Asad were a bit ashamed. They said, listen, if you didn't help Hussein on the battlefield, at least bury the body of those who passed away, those who were shaheed. So the men of Banu Asad, they said, we went to bury the bodies. They said, as we came, we saw a man from the distance coming towards us. And he asked us, what are you guys doing here? We said, nothing, we're just looking around. He said, be honest with me, what are you doing here? I said, listen, we are here to bury the bodies of the martyrs, the shaheed. Those who passed away, we're here to bury the body. And that man was none other than Imam Zain al-Abideen alayhi salam. He said, if you're going to bury the bodies, then listen to me. He said, dig 3 graves. 3 graves. The first grave you dig is for the companions of my father, Ashab al-Hussein. In Ziyarat Ashura we say, Assalamu ala al-Hussein, wa ala Ali ibn al-Hussein, wa ala Ashab al-Hussein, wa ala awlad al-Hussein. So he says, dig 1 grave and put all the companions of my father, their bodies in that grave. The second grave, he says, dig it for Habib ibn Mazahir, one loyal companion of Imam al-Hussein. And the fact that Habib gets his own grave shows you how special Habib is. If you go to Karbala and you do ziyarah, Habib is on one side, Ashab al-Hussein is right here, and Imam Hussein himself is buried somewhere else. He says on the other one, you bury the family of Hussein. The family members of Hussein, you bury them here. And then he comes to the last one, he says, as for the body of my father, I will bury it myself. He says, for this body, only I can bury it. Imam Zain al-Abideen is walking towards the bodies. He looks on the ground and he sees a few fingers. He looks at the fingers and he notices it was the fingers of his father. His father's fingers had been cut off. Imam Hussein's fingers had been cut off. Imagine, I have a ring on my finger. Imam Hussein had a ring on his finger. When the enemy, they killed Imam Hussein, they tried to get rid of this ring. So they wanted to take the ring and sell it. They wanted to make money off it. So what they did was they're trying to take the ring out, but it's not coming off. So you know what they did? Cut the entire finger off and take the ring. So that finger was remaining on the ground. When Imam Zain al-Abideen sees that finger, he begins to cry. And naturally, like a son would, he wanted to kiss the neck of his father. But the issue is the body that he's looking at, there's no neck to it. The head has been taken over to the other city. Because what they did was they put the head on spears. They chopped the head off of Imam al-Hussein and his companions, and they put it on spears and they took it to another city. So Imam Zain al-Abideen is looking at this body without a head, a headless body, and he hasn't got any neck either for Zain al-Abideen to kiss. He says, when he buried that body, I went towards the Furat, the Euphrates River. He said, I went to the Furat and I saw a body that was cut into pieces, where if I lifted the right side, the left side would fall off. If I lifted the left side, the right side would fall off. Until I buried that body and I said, Ya Qamar Bani Hashim Abul Fadl al-Abbas. So he buried his uncle Abbas. Subhanallah, you'd think that this was difficult for him to bury the most beloved people to him. You'd think that this would be the most difficult. When they asked Imam Zain al-Abideen, what was the most difficult time in your life? He said, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham. 3 times. Why did he say Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham? Because when they were taken as prisoners towards the land of Sham, or this country known as Bilad al-Sham, they were taken in chains. They were cuffed up, chained to one another, women, children, and the captives. All chained. Now, when they were taken as prisoners to this city, Imam Zain al-Abideen is one of the captives. One man came to Imam Zain al-Abideen and he said, may God curse you, because he made Yazid our Amir victorious. Now that man did not know Zain al-Abideen. He said, may God curse you, and the fact that God has granted our master Yazid victory, this is a huge day for us. So they were celebrating. The people of Sham, they were celebrating. Imam Zain al-Abideen said, oh man, have you read the surahs in the Quran? Have you read the ayat in the Quran? He said, tell me. He said, oh man, have you read قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلَكُمْ عَلَيْهَ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمُوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى? He said, yes. He said, oh man, have you read وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقًّا? He said, yes, I have. He said, have you read وَعَلَمُ إِنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مَّنِ الشَّيْءٍ فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمْسًا وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَالَّذِي قُرْبَى? Have you read that ayah? He said, yes. He said, have you read the ayah إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا? And he said, yes. He said, who are these verses about? He said, the family of the Prophet. Imam said, then who are we? The man said, I don't know who you are. He said, oh man, we are the family of the prophets. We are taken as captives. We, those verses that you recite in the Quran, we are that same people. Because Sham, the people of Sham, they didn't know. Media like it is today, we have Facebook, we have Snapchat, we have a Safari, we have ChatGPT. You search something that's happening in Mexico right now, you'll know what it is. Instant news. At that time, that wasn't the case. The Shami people, the people of Sham did not know that. They didn't even know Hussein was fighting Yazid. All they knew was there was a rebellious man and he was fighting the so-called Amir of that time, which happened to be Yazid. So to them, they didn't recognize Imam Sajjad. One companion of Rasulullah, his name is Sahal bin Sa'd al-Sa'idi. He was present on that day. He said, I came and I'm looking and I'm wondering, and I see people are celebrating and I see a group of captives with me. And I said, what's going on? Is it a day of Eid? Why is people celebrating? One person turned around to me and he said, don't be surprised if the heavens were to collapse and the earth was to suck the people in. Because today is a very grievous day. He said, then I recognized Zain al-Abideen. Sahal bin Sa'd al-Sa'di says, I went to Imam Zain al-Abideen and I said, O Zain al-Abideen, I am Sahal, the companion of your great-grandfather. Imam Zain al-Abideen says, Sahal, I want you to do me a favor. Bring me a piece of cloth. He said, okay. He said, I went to go to bring a piece of cloth for him, and I thought that Zain al-Abideen would use the piece of cloth to either wipe himself or maybe do something else. But the moment I give him that piece of cloth, he puts it between the chain and his neck. And he says, oh Sahel, this chain that has been tied around my neck has been cutting through my neck since Karbala. It was what a scene it was. As the captives are walking throughout Bilad al-Sham or the Bazaar of Sham, there are people from the story buildings, 2-story, 3-story buildings, they're pouring hot boiling water on top of these captives. Lady Zainab says, we were walking through the Bazaar of Sham and they would pour boiling water on the top of my nephew's head. He's in chains, he's bleeding, and they're pouring boiling water on him. And then after that, you thought that was the end of it. Then he goes to the courtyard of Yazid and he sees the head of his father on a plate. Remember I said when the head was chopped off, the head was brought in front of that king. And that king was poking the lips and the teeth of that head. The head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But Zain al-Abideen does not give up. He gives such a khutbah, he gives such a lecture where it shakes Yazid's empire. We're not going to get into the lecture tonight, but he gives such an impact on the Umayyad dynasty where Yazid's like, get these guys out of here. They're going to make me lose my reputation. So anyway, we're not going to go into the khutbah, but we're going to go into what happens after Karbala. Because like I mentioned, many people know about what Karbala happened and what Zain al-Abideen did at Karbala. But after Karbala, 35 years Zain al-Abideen lives. You're telling me he did nothing? That's not true. Zain al-Abideen realized that, listen, the Muslim community, the Muslim leaders at that time are too focused on their dunya rather than their akhirah. They are the type of people who are going to say their shahada. They're going to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. But they're ready to kill the very grandson of the Rasulullah. Look how ironic it is. You say you believe in the Prophet of God, then you're ready to get the sword and kill the grandson of the Holy Prophet of God. Imam Zain al-Abideen, at that time, he realized that Islam is dead. When Yazid was in power, Islam was almost dead. In Farsi we say Karbala dar Karbala mi mand agar Zainab nabud. Karbala would have remained at Karbala if it wasn't for Zainab. In other words, the mission that Zainab and her nephew Zain al-Abideen had after Karbala is the exact same reason you and I are sitting here tonight. They had a mission to continue the legacy of Karbala. Imam Zain al-Abidin, alongside his auntie Zainab, is what is living through this legacy that we are here tonight. You come here 10 nights in a row, some come up to the 13th. Every year is thanks to Imam Zain al-Abidin and Lady Zainab. Abu Abdullah did his job on the battlefield. Off the battlefield was the role of Zainab and her nephew. Imam Zain al-Abidin could have easily said, look, the community has killed my father, they've massacred everyone, I have no one, I just want to seclude myself, I hate everyone, I don't want to be a part of anything. He could have easily done that. Because many of us, when something bad happens to us, we just want to hide. We just want to not be included. You know, nobody likes me, they killed all my family, I don't want anything to do with that. Imam Zain al-Abidin, what he did was he chose to reform society, change society. How? He said, listen, what's the best way to change society? The first way he can change society is to bring in students and servants and teach them the sunnah of Rasulullah. He would bring servants to his house and he would teach them about the teachings of his great-grandfather. I'll give you an example. One day Imam Zain al-Abidin is sitting in his house and he calls for his worker, his servant. He calls him the first time, the servant doesn't answer. He calls him the second time, the servant doesn't answer. He calls him the third time, the servant still doesn't answer. But when he calls him the fourth time, the servant comes. Imam Zain al-Abidin says, I called you 3 times. Did you not hear me? And he said, no, I heard you. I heard you right. He said, then why did you not come? He said, because I wanted to test the mercy of Zain al-Abidin. My former masters, every single time they would call my name, I'd be there. If I wasn't there the first time, I'd get a whip. But Zain al-Abidin is so humble that he calls me 4 times and I go on the 4th time. And even after that, he says, what's wrong? Why did you not hear me? Or why did you not come? He does not give me the whip. Look how merciful Zain al-Abidin is. Now, number 1. Number 2, one other day, he's sitting and he's having his meal when his servant accidentally pours some boiling water onto his lap. When someone pours boiling water on you, the immediate reaction is you get angry. What are you doing? You just burnt my clothes. So the servant accidentally pours boiling water onto the Imam's lap. If anyone, it happens to anyone, sack that servant, get him out of here. I don't want him serving in this house again. Nah. I don't want that guy. What does Zain al-Abidin do? The moment, listen very carefully, the moment the servant pours that boiling water, he recites some ayahs in the Quran and it's beautiful. What does he say? He says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي الشَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنَ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Those who donate in prosperity and adversity and control their anger and they forgive others, and Allah loves those who do good. So what happens here? He says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. Kazimin al-ghayz means the one who restrains their anger. You know how you're getting angry, you want to get angry, and you control yourself. So he recites that verse, and Imam Zain al-Abidin is like, I've restrained my anger. And he says, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنَ النَّاسِ. And he says, I've forgiven you. And then he says, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And Allah loves those who do good. And Imam Zain al-Abidin says, you are free to go for the sake of Allah. He doesn't retaliate, doesn't say, why did you do this? Doesn't say, you've lost your job. No. I've restrained my anger. I've forgiven you for what you have done. You are free to go. This is the character of Zain al-Abidin. But what is more surprising is not that Zain al-Abidin forgives this servant. It's the fact that his servant knows at the same level of Quran or very similar to his master Zain al-Abidin, which goes to show you that the relationship between Zain al-Abidin and his master was more like students and teacher. That's exactly what the relationship was. That's the first way you reform society. The second way you reform society is through du'as. In Islam we have different types of du'as. Dua kumayl, dua tawassul, dua makarim al-akhlaq, Dua Nutba, and so on and so forth. Imam Zain al-Abideen has written a book known as Sahifatu Sajjadiyya. If anybody has read that book, they'll know what I'm talking about. Sahifa Sajjadiyya is the book of Psalms or Dua by Imam Zain al-Abideen. I remember reading, there was a scholar, he said, I had attended the office of the Pope, not the current Pope, the previous Pope. He said, I attended the office of the Pope and I noticed that the book of Sahifatu Sajjadiyya was in the Pope's office. And I noticed to myself, look, the Pope is Christian or Catholic. What's an Islamic book doing in his office? And the Pope said to me that I have not come across such a book of Psalms like the Psalms of David and the equivalent of this. So when Imam Zain al-Abideen is writing Sahifa al-Sajjadiyya, the same way we read the Psalms of David, Zabur Dawood, we have Zabur al Muhammad, which is the Psalms of Zain al-Abideen. Because Imam Zain al-Abideen realized that, listen, dua is the weapon of the believer. With dua is what you become strong. With dua is what you become resilient. And he was asked once, he said, what's the difference or the distance between the heaven and the earth? And he replied that the distance between the heaven and the earth is the cry of an oppressed person in dua. Why write a book of dua, ya Imam Zain al-Abideen? Imam Zain al-Abideen noticed that the people at that time had lost their connection with God. Why? Because they had killed the representative of God, Imam Hussein ibn Ali. So he wanted to change society through gaining back that connection with God. And one of his famous lines in Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq, for those who haven't read the Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq, please read it. He says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali wa abdilni min baghzati ahli al-shanan al-muhabba wa min hasad ahli al-bagha al-mawadda. Oh Allah, bless the family of Muhammad and his household and replace the animosity of my enemy towards love for me, and the envy of the people with love and affection for me. He's saying, those who hate me, Ya Allah, allow them to open their hearts and allow them to love me. Those who are jealous of me, Ya Allah, allow them to become blessed by your mercy. Then he has other du'as. He has many du'as, and I don't want to take too much of your time. He has du'a Abu Hamza Somali. He has great companions. For example, Abu Khalid al-Kabuli, which is an Afghan companion of Imam Zain al-Abideen. And I was shocked because this was the first Afghan companion of the Imams. Abu Khalid was an Afghan companion who was from Kabul. And this was a staunch follower of Imam Zain al-Abideen alayhi salam. And in his legacy that he leaves behind, another one is Risalat al-Huquq, the treatise of rights, where he talks about the rights of various things. The right of your eye, the right of your ear, the right of your parents, the right of your children, the right of your soul. When you look at the UN Declaration of Human Rights, they talk to you about basic human rights. But does it talk about the right of the soul? No, because only Zain al-Abideen brings you into that world. Imam was the very embodiment of generosity, where even the enemy or the one who insulted him, he showed love to. And that's why he said, make the love or the hatred of my enemy into love for me. He was the very embodiment of that dua. What happened? You see, there was a man by the name of Hisham ibn Ismail. And he was the governor, if I'm not mistaken, of Medina. Very ruthless governor. And he would insult Imam Zain al-Abideen very much. He would harass him, he would insult him, he would curse him. Imam Zain al-Abideen went through a lot because of Hisham bin Ismail. When Hisham was sacked from his position, where he was fired from his position by one of the other rulers, the ruler who sacked him decided to tie Hisham to a pole and put him out in public. And he said to the public, "Oh public, if Hisham has been wrong to you, now's your chance to take your revenge on him. If he was bad to you, now's your chance to take your revenge on him." Now, a person comes to Imam Zain al-Abideen and he says, "Imam, have you heard what happened in the community?" Imam said, What's the issue? He said, "Hisham, the one who used to insult you, is now on the pole and is tied up. What are you going to do? Naturally, usually, a person who gets insulted, he wants to take that venom back on the guy. He wants to take his revenge back on the guy. Imam said, what is it that we should do? One companion suggested, or one person that was sitting beside him said, listen, Imam, he's been bad to you. Just be bad to him. Make it even. Imam Zain al-Abideen goes to Hisham ibn Ismail. He says, Hisham, if you are hungry, then Zain al-Abideen is ready to feed you. If you are thirsty, then Zain al-Abideen is ready to quench your thirst. Hisham, if you have a debt, if you need money, Zain al-Abideen is here to give you. What kind of character is Imam Zain al-Abideen? Where the one who very much insults him is being nice towards him. And to finally conclude, there was that idea that Imam Hussein was very much crying throughout his life. And he was impacted by Karbala. No doubt, Imam Zain al-Abideen was traumatized by Karbala. Every single moment in his life, he had remnants or memories of Karbala. Because of the relationship that he had with his father, he had very much a strong emotion when it came to Karbala. Every single time Imam Zain al-Abideen sees water, he would begin to cry. Why? Because he says, my father died thirsty. Every time he would begin to see water, he would say, my father died thirsty. One day he's walking past a butcher, and the butcher has got a sheep ready to butcher the sheep and get its meat. He comes to the butcher and he says, oh man, have you taken care of that animal? He says, yes, I have, yes. And he said, oh man, has that sheep drank water? He said, yes. Every creation of God deserves to live, and they deserve to have food and drink water. He says, oh man, my father did not get the same rights like that sheep. He was killed thirsty. My father, Hussein ibn Ali, he had his rights violated. His finger removed, his head chopped off, died thirsty. And he began to cry every time he would see a butcher, every time he would see water, he would begin to cry. And in his final moments, when Imam Zain al-Abideen was in his deathbed, when he was about to pass away, he had his son Imam al-Baqir on his chest. And this broke Imam Zain al-Abideen. He had Imam Zain al-Abideen had Imam al-Baqir on his chest, and he began to cry. Imam al-Baqir said, oh my father, why do you cry? Why do you cry so much? He said, my son, I cry because when I'm about to pass away, I have my son on my chest. When my father was about to pass away, he had Shimr on his chest. Shimr was on the chest of Hussein with the dagger ready to cut that head off. The chest of my father experienced the dagger of Shimr, whereas I experienced the love of my son al-Baqir. Why should I not cry for my father? My father was the one who was killed by the dagger of Shimr, and my father was the one who had the horses trample over his chest and crush his ribs. Oh Muhammad al-Baqir, why should I not cry? So as we can see, Imam Zain al-Abideen was truly impacted by Karbala. But the fact is that he left a legacy behind, and his legacy was not just Majalis al-Hussein, but rather through his books, through his generosity, and through his character. So inshallah, may we learn something about this and try to embody it in our life as well. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.